Kennedy is alive. That should have been impossible. At the end of episode 7, everything pointed toward the same conclusion. Lukas and Kennedy went outside Silo 18, they were hit by that strange attack, their radio went dead, and the algorithm told Camille they had been neutralized. Then Kennedy called back. That one transmission changes the question completely. We already know Patrick Kennedy survived, we know he reached Silo 17, and we know the children there are alive. What we don't know is where Lukas is. And I think that distinction matters because episode 7 may have been showing us something very specific about how the attack outside actually worked. Juliet sent Lukas and Kennedy out for a reason. They needed information from Silo 17 that could help them locate the safeguard system inside Silo 18. The mission was already dangerous, but Juliet also knew there was another problem. The algorithm had effectively approved their trip. That should have been a warning. Earlier, Juliet had tried to send Knox and Shirley outside, and the algorithm prevented it. Then Lukas and Kennedy were chosen, and suddenly the path opened. So when the two men finally stepped outside, Juliet already had reason to suspect that someone or something was controlling the conditions around them. And then we got the attack. There was a buzzing or mechanical sound. Then gunfire. Their communication stopped. Inside Silo 18, everyone assumed the worst. The algorithm appeared to confirm it. That part is especially important because Camille trusted the information. She believed Lukas and Kennedy were gone. Then Kennedy's transmission came through, which means the algorithm's information was either incomplete, deliberately misleading, or based on an assumption that was no longer true. And that raises a much bigger problem. If Kennedy survived, what actually happened outside? The easiest explanation is that the attack came from drones or some kind of automated defense system protecting the silos. We heard mechanical movement before the gunfire, and that fits with what the show has already established about how aggressively the silo system protects itself. But there is another detail I keep coming back to. Kennedy and Lukas were together when the attack began. Only Kennedy eventually reached Silo 17, so why him? One possibility is simply that Lukas was injured while Kennedy managed to escape. That would be the straightforward explanation. But Silo rarely gives us a straightforward event without leaving something underneath it. There is a second possibility. The attack was triggered by something they were carrying or doing. Remember, they were communicating by radio, and their radio signal disappeared at almost exactly the same point when the attack began. We don't know whether those two events are connected. That's speculation. But it is a strange coincidence, especially when the show has spent so much time establishing that communication between silos is important. There is also a clue from Solo. Back in Silo 17, Solo talked about the dust coming. At the time, it was easy to treat that as part of the strange environment outside. But now that we have seen another person cross the space between silos and survive an attack, that line deserves another look. What exactly is dangerous outside? Is the entire surface contaminated? Are there specific areas that are dangerous? Is the danger actively controlled? And could the thing that attacked Lukas and Kennedy be connected to the same system that controls what people see, where they can travel, and when they are allowed to leave? That last possibility becomes much more interesting because Juliet herself survived the outside. She crossed the area around Silo 18, reached Silo 17, and eventually returned. The system clearly had opportunities to stop her. It didn't. Now Lukas and Kennedy go outside under very different circumstances, and almost immediately something attacks them. That suggests the environment may not be uniformly lethal. There may be rules, and if there are rules, someone knows them. That's where Lukas becomes especially important. Because Lukas isn't just another person who went outside. He has spent much of the series trying to understand the system behind the silos. Bernard used him to decode information about the silo network. He learned things about the structure connecting these communities that most people inside Silo 18 never knew existed. And now he was sent towards Silo 17 with a very specific mission. He needed information about Safeguard. If Lukas survived, he may now know something that Juliet desperately needs. That could be why the show has separated him from Kennedy. Kennedy's survival gave Juliet enough information to stop the bombing, but Lukas disappearing leaves a much more useful mystery hanging over the next episode. Where did he go? There are several possibilities. He could be dead. We shouldn't ignore that. The attack looks serious, and the show has already established that going outside carries a real risk. Kennedy surviving doesn't automatically mean Lukas survived too, but I think there is a stronger reason to keep that possibility open. We never saw Lukas die, and in a mystery like Silo, that distinction matters. The show gave us the sound of an attack, a broken radio connection, and the algorithm's report. It deliberately withheld the one piece of evidence that would settle Lucas's fate, his body. That leaves room for something else to have happened. Maybe Lucas was injured and separated from Kennedy. Maybe he was taken somewhere. Or maybe he made it farther towards Silo 17 than Kennedy did, and Kennedy simply doesn't know where he is. That last possibility could become very important, because Kennedy's transmission confirms that someone made it to Silo 17. He also confirms that the children are alive, but the transmission doesn't give us a clear answer about Lucas, and that feels deliberate. There is another reason I think Lucas's disappearance could matter beyond simply keeping him alive for another episode. Look at what the story needs right now. Juliet needs to stop Safeguard. She needs to understand how the poison system works. She needs information from Silo 17. And she has just discovered that the algorithm's information cannot necessarily be trusted. Lucas is one of the few characters who can connect those pieces. He understands the technical side of the Silo system. He has already studied information that came from outside the normal rules of Silo 18. He also knows enough about the other silos to understand why Silo 17 matters. So if the writers wanted to keep one character alive outside for a future reveal, Lucas would make a lot of sense. There's even a possible connection to the radio. Kennedy's message came through using Lucas's equipment. That doesn't prove Lucas was alive at that moment, but it means Lucas's gear, knowledge, or location could still be part of what happens next. And I think the radio itself deserves more attention. For most of Silo, communication has been treated as something restricted. People inside one silo aren't supposed to know what is happening elsewhere. Information is controlled because information creates rebellion. Now we have a group inside Silo 18 communicating with people in Silo 17. That is exactly the kind of thing the system was designed to prevent. So what happens when people start using those channels while they're outside? Could the radio reveal their location? Could it trigger some kind of automated response? Could the system detect that someone is attempting to communicate between silos? We don't have confirmation for any of that. But if the attack was connected to their transmission, it would explain something that otherwise feels strange. Why did the danger appear at that exact moment? And why did the radio go silent immediately afterward? There is also the possibility that the attack itself was never intended to kill both men. Maybe the objective was to stop them from reaching Silo 17. If so, Kennedy's survival could be a mistake the system didn't account for. And Lucas could be the person who actually got through. That would make his disappearance much more interesting. Imagine that Lucas survived but couldn't reach Silo 17. He could be somewhere between the silos, injured and alone, carrying information that nobody inside Silo 18 knows he has. Or he could have reached another part of Silo 17 before Kennedy. Either way, the person Juliet thinks she lost could still be the person who has the information she needs. There is one more thing that makes this theory fit the current story. The algorithm has been behaving with increasing precision. Camille has been relying on information from it to understand what Juliet and the rebels are doing. But episode 7 showed the danger of trusting those predictions too much. The algorithm said Lucas and Kennedy were neutralized. Kennedy was alive. That doesn't necessarily mean the algorithm lied. It could mean neutralized has a meaning that isn't as simple as dead. Maybe the system considers someone neutralized once they are no longer a threat. Maybe it assumes a person will die based on the conditions around them. Or maybe the information Camille receives is being filtered by whoever is actually controlling the system. And that last possibility connects directly to the larger mystery we've been following all season. Who is making the decisions? Because if the algorithm knew Lucas and Kennedy were outside, knew where they were going, knew they had been attacked, and then still failed to account for Kennedy reaching Silo 17, there is clearly something about the system that the characters don't understand. Lucas could be the next person to discover it. That's why I don't think his fate should be treated as a simple survival question. The better question is what happened to him after the attack. If he's dead, the show needs to explain why Kennedy survived. If he's alive, the show needs to explain where he went. And if he was separated from Kennedy deliberately, then we may be looking at the setup for a much bigger reveal about the space between the silos. Because there is now evidence that the area outside isn't just a dead zone. People can cross it. People can survive it. People can communicate through it. And something out there is actively responding to them. That changes how I look at Juliet's journey too. She spent so much time believing that the outside world was a simple equation. Put on the right suit, survive the poison long enough, clean the sensor, and maybe you can reach another silo. But the story keeps adding complications. The visual environment can be manipulated. The poison can be controlled. Safeguard can be activated. The silos can communicate. And now automated defenses appear to be operating between them. The outside may be part of the same controlled system as everything underground. If Lucas discovered even one piece of that, he could be more valuable alive than Kennedy. Kennedy has already delivered the immediate answer Juliet needed. Lucas may be carrying the deeper one. So my current theory is that Kennedy survived because he managed to reach Silo 17 after the attack, while Lucas was either injured, separated, or forced onto a different path. I don't think we have enough evidence to say Lucas is definitely alive, but I also don't think the episode gave us enough to call him dead. And that distinction matters because Silo has a habit of withholding the one detail that would make a mystery easy. Right now, Kennedy is the proof that the story outside didn't happen the way everyone inside Silo 18 believed. Lucas could be the reason why. If he turns up in Silo 17, the obvious question will be what he saw. If he turns up somewhere else, that could be even bigger, because then we would have to ask who moved him, why they wanted him separated from Kennedy, and what Lucas learned before he disappeared. And with Juliet now racing against Safeguard, that information could arrive at exactly the moment she needs it most. Kennedy survived. That's confirmed. Lucas is still the mystery, and until we see what happened to him outside, I think we should assume the show is keeping that answer for a reason.